right, let's do it. The 2003 The 2003 playoff Cleveland. You know what? Let's do this a little differently. I want you to close your eyes. Now, we're going to time travel to January 5th, 2003. Imagine you're at a gas station, filling up your car for about $1.47 a gallon. While you're pumping your gas, a car next to you pulls up, blasting the radio, and the song playing is Eminem's Lose Yourself, the current #1 hit in the country, the hit song from his new movie, 8 Mile. You hear that? That's your cell phone. The top of the line, best on the market, and best selling cell phone, the Nokia 1100. And it has Snake. Now you're back home and you're bored, so you boot up Madden 2003. Now, why did I have you do all of that? Well, because you're killing time to watch something that you at the time can't even fathom or grasp how rare this would be at the moment. You're killing time to watch a Browns playoff game. The last time the Browns made the playoffs, the world was a different place. Things that dominate our lives right now, like smartphones, social media, and broadband internet, were crude, clunky, and borderline unusable versions of themselves. This website that I'm using to speak to thousands of you right now did not even exist. Not a single person had tweeted. Nobody had ever taken a picture of their food to share to their friends, and liking things like the Wu-Tang Clan didn't automatically make you an old head. I don't say this to make you feel old, but I say this to put into context for those who don't know how long ago it's been since the Browns have made a playoff game. Because at the time I was 7, the same age, by the way, as the guy who would eventually become this team's first franchise quarterback since 1999, Baker Mayfield. And oh, by the way, there's some high school kid down in Akron who some say might be really, really, really good at this basketball thing named LeBron James. Now that the table is set and you have felt all 17 years of this drought, let's talk about the 2002 Cleveland Browns. The 2002 Browns are a surprisingly elusive story to get a handle on as an outsider, because despite it being the only playoff qualifying season since 1999, it is one of the least celebrated by Browns fans. Teams like the 2007 Browns or even the 7-9 2014 Browns are talked about and reminisced upon more often than 2002. In short, while 2002 had moments that will last a lifetime, like Jim Donovan's Run William Run call, in the grand scheme of things, it still isn't celebrated as much as it probably should. Now, why is that? Well, there's a multitude of factors that go into it. First being that the names associated with that team long-term weren't looked at positively at all by Browns fans. You had the head coach, Butch Davis, who was seen as a disappointment. The quarterback, Tim Couch, while today is looked at in a more fonder light, while people now give him the credit that if he had had something built around him, he could have turned into something. But that was not the sentiment at the time. At the time, people thought Tim Couch was soft. They thought he was sorry. They thought he was weak. They thought he would never, ever amount to anything, to the point to where when Tim Couch got injured, Browns fans cheered. Yes, they cheered when their own quarterback got hurt at home. If you think what happened with Kevin Durant in the finals in Toronto was bad, you obviously weren't alive for when that happened to Tim Couch. the fact that he has come back in recent years to support the Browns makes you think a lot about the character of Tim Couch. That is a good dude. That is a dude who does not carry a lot of bitterness in his soul. So big props to Tim Couch. The second reason why it's not remembered is finally because this 2003 team wasn't a star-laden team. It wasn't filled of guys who would become or have the potential to become stars, but just failed, like the 2007 team had. The 2003 team was mainly guys whose ceiling was really good role player, and they reached that ceiling in that season. And oh yeah, the way this whole playoff thing ended that season, yeah, that kind of hurts the memory a little bit. So now that we know why this season isn't looked at as fondly, and we know that the roster is one of the reasons, let's actually look at the roster and see what was going on for these 2002 Browns. On offense, you had a quarterback controversy between #1 overall pick in 1999, Tim Couch, and Kelly Holcomb. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Kelly Holcomb's game, he's a guy who, for a couple years in his career, was at like a Ryan Fitzpatrick level. And since he was the backup quarterback to a disappointing #1 overall draft pick, fans wanted him to get his chance because they were tired of Tim Couch. And one of Tim Couch's things was that he turned the ball over way too much. So the fans literally just wanted a change at quarterback, and Kelly Holcomb was the guy to cheer. At running back, you had a guy who looked promising in his first year, but ended up being a disappointment for the rest of his career in 16th overall draft pick, William Green. William Green was a rookie from Boston College this season, but he was the Browns' lead tailback. He had almost 900 yards this season, 6 touchdowns, and he had a few huge moments in the season, and he had a 100-yard-a-game streak for about 3 or 4 games this season where he really looked like he was putting it together at the end of his rookie year. So there was a lot of optimism for William Green at the time. And then the wide receivers were young, and this whole team was young, but the wide receivers especially were a young, talented group, headlined by Quincy Morgan, who almost had 1,000 yards that year, and backed up by Kevin Johnson and Dennis Northcutt. Now, the thing about this wide receiver corps that most Browns fans will remember is that they were not the most reliable catchers of the football. As the team's top 2 targets, Quincy Morgan and Kevin Johnson, had pedestrian catch percentages at 55 and 57% respectively. To put this in perspective, Antonio Callaway, a guy who Browns fans today know for dropping the football way more than they wanted him to, had about a 54% catch percentage with much less targets than these guys had. So, not a great number for your top 2 wide receivers to have, but the team did have a saving grace. Ironically, Dennis Northcutt was spectacular at bringing in balls that he was targeted to, catching 76% of the balls thrown his way. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty reliable. That's pretty dependable. But this Browns team, as I said earlier, was just kind of solid. On defense, they were nothing special. They were ranked 21st, but they were specifically good in the red zone. And one of the characteristics of this season was that this team had a lot of last-minute victories, a lot of Cardiac Kid-esque moments. So that was the identity and the roster of the team. Now let's look into the season. The 2002 season would start off interesting. Well, as interesting as the Browns could start a season. First, Tim Couch would miss the first 2 games of the year because of an elbow injury, which gave a huge opportunity to fan favorite Kelly Holcomb. Holcomb didn't play spectacularly, but he noticeably turned the ball over less and went down the field more than Tim Couch did, and went 1-1. And Couch's trademark at the time was looking down the first option and throwing the check down or throwing an interception. But the opener against the Chiefs was a close game, and the Browns looked like they were going to win this game. They had a 2-point lead with just a few seconds remaining, and the Chiefs' only hope was to throw a Hail Mary from the wrong side of the football field. And right at the moment where it seemed that the Browns had locked this one up beyond any reasonable doubt.
He got rid of it! John Tate is running with the football! Flags come down, and Tate is forced out of bounds at the 25.
Let me tell you something. Dwayne Rudd threw his helmet while the play was going on. That's That's a defensive. Look at him there on the left side of your screen. He doesn't even know that John Tate is running with the football. The play is still going on.
What a turn of events.
What a gaff.
Morton Anderson, the oldest player in the NFL. 30 yards away. Anderson. He nails it. Kansas City wins.
They found a way to lose. Yes, Dwayne Rudd threw off his helmet, thinking that the play was over, thinking that the game was over, and drew a personal foul with 0 seconds remaining. And since the game can't end on a defensive penalty, the Chiefs had an untimed down on the 25-yard line and kicked a field goal to win the game. Now, if that is not the most deflating way to lose a season opener, if that is not the most, and I hate when people say it, but if that's not the most Browns way of losing a season opener, I'm unaware to it. I mean, sure, people thought the most Browns thing to ever happen last year was when the Browns tied the season opener, but no, losing the season opener because some dude throws his helmet off when the other team had no chance prior to that, that's just finding a way to lose on a whole nother elite level. So thank you, Dwayne Rudd. And the season didn't start off on a great path as that game would suggest, as the Browns would continue to struggle on to a 4-5 record at their Week 10 bye. Now, as you can see, this has all the makings of a Browns disaster season. Not only were fans fed up with Tim Couch, they wanted to back up the go. The whole quarterback controversy thing was something that could have easily gotten out of hand. And if the Browns weren't careful and didn't start to win some games soon, the quarterback controversy would consume the team and consume the season. But the Browns didn't let that happen because coming out of their bye, they won back-to-back road games against the Saints and the Bengals. The next 4 games they went 2-2, which meant that the last 2 weeks of the season were going to be very, very important. And the last 2 teams that they played were the Baltimore Ravens, who were 2 years removed from a Super Bowl championship, and the Atlanta Falcons. The Browns at this point, to have any hope in winning the playoffs, would have to win those 2 games, and that was not an easy ask. And they had to play Baltimore on the road. And then right after that, they had to play the Atlanta Falcons, a team who is also trying to fight for playoff life in their conference. So this wasn't an easy road at all for the 2002 Browns. And how did it go? Well, on the road in Baltimore, Tim Couch had one of the few heroic moments in his career, as he was down 7-13 with 2 minutes left on his own 10-yard line. And Tim Couch, on the road, had his own version of John Elway's drive, as Tim Couch methodically and surgically dissected the Ravens defense, a defense that won a Super Bowl and carried Trent Dilfer to that Super Bowl. Tim Couch dissected them and ended the drive with a beautiful touchdown pass to Mark Campbell. And after the Browns intercepted a Hail Mary attempt by Baltimore, it was all over. And there it was, Week 17 at home against the Atlanta Falcons. An Atlanta Falcons team that I believe is 9-5-1. An Atlanta Falcons team that has a young Michael Vick. Not prime Michael Vick, but he's only a few years away from that. For the Falcons, the stakes were that if they won, they would obviously be in the playoffs, but they can also get in if the New Orleans Saints lost. For the Browns, well, the Browns needed to win regardless to have their playoff hopes stay alive, and they needed the Jets to beat the Packers in order to stay alive. Since the Saints game was going on at the same time as this Browns game, since the Jets game was a primetime game, that meant when that ball got kicked off, for all intent and purposes for both sides of the field, this was absolutely a playoff game. This game started off slow. The Browns made a field goal to go up 3-0, and Tim Couch looked like Tim Couch. And then something interesting happens. Tim Couch gets hurt which puts Kelly Holcomb in. That seems to immediately give the Browns offense life as William Green is running harder and Kelly Holcomb is making plays. And then William Green, who at this point of the season was on fire, breaks off this touchdown run to put the Browns up 10-0. Later in the second quarter, Michael Vick would answer and the score would be 10-7 at the half. The second half started slow, but this Browns defense, despite being the 21st ranked defense in the NFL, was somehow the second best red zone defense team in the NFL. And they would earn that ranking in this game. While the Falcons were in scoring range 3 times in the third quarter, they were held to 3 field goals, keeping the score at a manageable 16-10 at the start of the fourth. And in that fourth quarter, the Browns would force a fumble, which leads to this touchdown pass. But then with just a few minutes remaining, the defining moment of not just William Green's career, but broadcast legend Jim Donovan's career would happen with this one play and with this one call.
Second down, they give it to Green. Green, stutter step, he's through. First down, 40, 45, 50, 45, 40. Run, William, run! 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
We've been waiting for it to break the big one, but he saved it for the right time.
64 yards!
But while that play put the Browns up 8, it in no way ended this game. With just a little bit over 1 minute remaining, the Atlanta Falcons were able to drive down the field, and then Warrick Dunn broke off this run, which comes as humanly close to scoring a touchdown without scoring it as one could get. Now the Browns are in a tough position. They have to stop a team that has Warrick Dunn, TJ Duckett, and Michael Vick from getting a yard. Less than a yard, a few inches. But this is the second ranked red zone defense in the NFL, and that ranking would certainly be put to test today. Second down, they pass it and it sails out of bounds. Now with third down and inches away from the end zone, the Falcons run the ball and the Browns stop them. But now it's fourth down. Fourth down in a few feet. This Browns defensive line, this Browns front seven, is the only thing that could stop the Falcons and put the Browns in position to be in the playoffs. This team worked all year and all season to be in this position, a position that nobody would have thought they would have been eligible for. This team had worked incredibly hard, had won a ton of close games to be just in this position. The Browns are the second-ranked red zone defense in the NFL. It's the moment to prove it.
They may get to play another. No signal. Stop short. The dog pound erupts.
And there it was, the joy. Browns fans believing that there is a very strong chance that this team was going to make the playoffs, and this team was worthy of the playoffs. They just beat a team that was playoff worthy themselves. That this Browns team could be something, that there was something to be proud of in the city of Cleveland, the joy, the jubilation, the celebration. But how did that playoff game go? Well, join me next week as I go over the last Browns playoff game, and we go in depth about the 2003 game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is it this week. Let me know in the comment section down below if you are able to have a memory of the 2003 Browns season. And if you're not, or if you just want to answer a different question, tell me, why do you think we don't celebrate that season as a Browns fandom as much as we have celebrated 2007? I'm interested to see the responses down below. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Let me know. And if you want to make sure you can be notified when part 2 of this video drops, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and ding the notification bell so you can know when I upload a video. I covered the Cleveland Browns, but I also covered the whole NFL. So if you're interested, please check it out. And And if you have a buck or two to spare, please consider joining my Patreon page and having your name added to the bottom of this cool little ticker. This bootleg ESPN ticker. I don't care. I don't care. But that is it, guys. Have a great day. Have a good night.